Hi again, it's Monica, and this is Module 1. Welcome. We are going to be talking about imposter syndrome, which many of us, especially women, can experience when we're in a new position, especially a position of power. So I want to talk about some ways that we can get through this and look at things a little bit more realistically. So let's start with think about an unhelpful thought you had this week. So think about a thought you had this week that had to do with you not feeling confident or competent. So let's say you have a thought, I shouldn't be in this position. I don't deserve this. Okay. So and then I want you to write that thought down on a piece of paper. Okay. So write that thought down at the top of the piece of paper. Okay. So once you write that down, I want you to create a table that looks just like this. Okay, so you're going to have your supporting facts and your unsupporting facts here. Okay, you can use any piece of paper. I want you to write that down under your unhelpful thought that you had this week that you are not confident about or not competent to fill this position. Okay, let's think about supporting facts for this unhelpful thought you had. What are some facts, what's some evidence that you have that this thought is true? Do you have any evidence? And remember that a thought is not evidence. A thought is just something that pops into your mind. Just because we have a thought that pops into your mind doesn't mean it has any truth behind it at all. And until we look at it further and investigate it further, we shouldn't really be honoring any of those unhelpful thoughts. Sometimes those unhelpful thoughts might have a little bit of evidence behind them. Most of the time they don't. And most of the time they have a lot of unsupporting facts for this. So let's start with our supporting facts. I really want you to take the time to write down as many facts as you have. This could be maybe a coworker told you you're incompetent. Maybe a boss told you you're incompetent. Maybe somebody said to you, you don't deserve to be here or you shouldn't be here. Something like that happened. I want you to really look for any of those facts that you have. And I want you to write those down in the supporting facts side. The supporting facts side is the side that supports that unhelpful thought that you've had. Okay. You're probably going to want to pause the video to make sure that you write down all the supporting facts that you have. Okay, now that you've written down all your supporting facts, which I'm assuming are not very many, the reason I'm assuming this is because of the reason you are in a position of power in the first place and in a position that's meaningful to you and meaningful for your career and whatever your career's objectives are, that most of these you're not going to have very many supporting facts for this unhelpful thought that you're having. And know too that, again, these are just thoughts. It doesn't mean there's any truth behind them. Looking for facts behind these thoughts and evidence behind these thoughts allows us to look at, is this thought true or is this just a thought that I'm having? But until we kind of go through those, we won't know. So now I want you to list the unsupporting facts. Maybe a coworker told you how great you are. The fact that you're in the position is an unsupporting fact to your unhelpful thought, right? What other unsupporting facts do you have? Maybe someone sent you an email about what a great job you did on a project. Maybe you organized your emails today. Maybe you were able to start a new project, finish a project. Maybe you helped someone. Maybe you helped someone feel better for the day. Whatever those unsupporting facts are against that thought, I want you to write those down. And again, the unsupporting facts are the ones that go against your unhelpful thought of, I'm not worthy. Okay? And I want you to pause this video again and really write out all those unsupporting facts. And they can be anything that's happened. I want you to really dig deep, and it doesn't have to be big. It can be something very small, like I was offered a spot in the meeting today to talk about what's going on, or I was able to talk to someone new at the company and gain more knowledge. It doesn't have to be this huge thing that you did. It doesn't have to be this big accomplishment you achieved. It can be things that are as simple as organized my workspace so that I can focus more on what I need to do today. That would go against that thought, because if you weren't able to do things like that and you didn't work hard to be where you are, to stay where you are, you wouldn't be there in the first place. That's how you got here. So we need to really dig deep for those unsupporting facts. Okay. So now I want you to pause the video, write those unsupporting facts down. Okay. Now, I want you to look at both sides. You've got your supporting facts for your unhelpful thought. You've got your unsupporting facts for your unhelpful thought. What's the balance there? I'm going to guess that you might have few to no supporting facts for the thought you're having that's not helpful. And I'm guessing you have quite a long list of unsupporting facts, things that go against that unhelpful thought that you had. This creates evidence for us to look back on when we are feeling like we're an imposter. Because based on these facts that we now have, it's not true. And anytime you start to think you have these unhelpful thoughts, you now have the power to map them out and look at them yourself to see if, is this just an unhelpful thought? Is there a little truth? Is there a lot of truth? Which side has more? And again, generally, almost always, unhelpful thoughts are not useful to us, and they often are just something we're thinking. They're not helpful for us in any way. It keeps us from focusing on our work. It keeps us from being as productive as possible because we're distracted by these thoughts that, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. So think about all those things. Also, some unsupporting facts are just all the things you've accomplished in your life so far. You can go back as far as thinking about, your teens and early 20s or wherever you are, your 30s, 40s. Think about those facts and write those down, because all of those have contributed to where you are today. And they build that evidence so that you don't have to just think, I'm not an imposter. You know you're not an imposter. You know that you deserve this because of these facts that you have written down. And because of all these facts I have written down, even if there's a couple facts against what we're thinking, the vast majority supports us being in this position and us deserving this position and us being helpful to others because we're in this position, or helping a company, or helping animals, or helping business, or helping the environment. Whatever you're doing, it's meaningful in the position you have, and these facts show you why. Okay, so when you have an unhelpful thought like this, again, you can map it out. Also, you can go back through and review your tables that you've already completed. So it's helpful to keep these in a journal, which the journal is what we talked about at our first meeting. Again, that journal is just for what you're learning here. I don't want you to put anything else in that journal except for what we talk about in these modules and what we talked about at our initial time together, our initial conversation. So put this in your journal from now on, if you just used a piece of paper, and then it's easy for you to refer back. You flip through your journal and you see, oh my gosh, look at all this evidence I have. Look at all these facts I have to say that I'm not an imposter. And then you don't just have to think, oh, that's not true. I'm not an imposter. You know it. So you don't have to just say the opposite, because that's hard. It's hard to just go from A to Z, 0 to 100. It's hard to think, I don't deserve this, and then just switch your thinking and say, no, I do deserve that. That's really hard to do. We have to make steps to get to that point. And this is just one step that you can take to start to get to that point. So keep this in your toolbox, keep this in your journal, refer to it later, write these down, use this table when you can. And whenever you're having an unhelpful thought related to what you deserve and why you're here, and those feelings that you have and thoughts that you have that just aren't helpful. So the other part of imposter syndrome that we can really work on is kind of like keeping evidence or doing these evidence tables. You can keep a spreadsheet on your computer. You can keep a Word document. You can keep something somewhere where you can make a list at the end of the week of all the things that you accomplished. Again, it can be anything, no matter how small, how big. I want you to include all of those things. I want you to give yourself credit for all those things you've done throughout the week. Again, building evidence, again, showing that you deserve to be in this position, you're qualified for this position, and it's important you're in this position. And I want you to take note of that. And this is also important just for the future. If you ever left this position or wanted to write a book or help somebody else that's coming into this position, you now have documented all the things that you've done that this position involves. And it also at the same time is going to show you all the reasons why you're not an imposter. So keep this list. If you can document this throughout the day, great. A lot of people that's hard to do. So even if you can just do it on Friday or whatever your last day of work is, really get all those things written down. And again, they can be no matter how small or big. Maybe you gave somebody a compliment, someone that works with you. You gave them a compliment who's having a hard day. Write that down, because as someone in your position, that says a lot. It means a lot coming from someone that's in an important position to someone that works for you or with you to get that compliment. That helps make them feel better and helps them see themselves for what they are. We can all use these strategies no matter where we are. So write those kind of things down too. So again, keep track of the things you do throughout your work week or work day that prove you're not an imposter, but also just helps you to keep track of all the things that you do. And you'll be amazed at how many things you do. Maybe you answered 20 emails today. Maybe you helped someone with their time management. You helped them squeeze in a break somewhere so that they didn't feel so overwhelmed. Maybe you helped someone brainstorm an idea for a project they want to work on. So anything, no matter how big or small, I want you to start cataloging those. Again, this imposter syndrome is generally something we feel when we first start at a position. This can happen, right? But you are the expert. That's why you're in this position. And as time goes on, of course, you will start to feel more confident, definitely. And these things aren't going to change overnight. Our feelings of this aren't going to change overnight. It's something we have to work on. Because these thoughts travel along these pathways in our brain, they get thicker, they get beefier the more we think about them. So if we start to write down this evidence, to keep track of all the things we're doing, to get all these facts, that's going to change our neural pathways that are weaker to the ones that we need, that are more helpful for us. It's going to make us be able to reach to that part of us that is true easier. Again, remember, this isn't about thinking more positive, although it is thinking more positive in a way, of course. It's mostly that you're thinking about things more realistically. What is real here and what is false? What is truth and what is untruth? So what do we have here that we're looking at? And that also makes it easier for you to know that you deserve this position, because realistically, you are doing all of these things. It's not just that you are thinking positive about it. You are doing them, and you have proof right here. So those are the things that will really help you with that thought of, hey, I'm not good enough. I don't have the confidence to do this. I don't deserve this job. Those are some strategies that you can implement this week. And I'm going to challenge you to try and do this every day or every other day, or at the least once a week. That is your challenge for this week, okay? And again, you can keep that on your desktop. That's probably the best place because it's easier for you to access it when you need to. Something else to think about is going back to the writing, these evidence tables, these supporting facts and unsupporting facts tables that we have, that we make in our journals, those tables, when we write those things down, those stick in our memory better. Research shows that if we write things down, it's called kinesthetic memory. So when we incorporate movement into our learning, we recall things better. So the more you can write these things down, the better you are going to be able to recall them in the future when you need them. So when you are having a tough meeting coming up, you can use these, you can pull from these because you can remember them better, because not only are you writing them, you're also looking back on them too, okay? And then you're also using these strategies in your day-to-day at work too. So the next topic I want to talk about here is presentations. A lot of us are very fearful of presentations. If you are not fearful of presentations, I applaud you. It takes a lot of practice. It really does. But there's something you can do about that too. So think about this. Think about all the presentations you've ever watched, okay? And think about a bad presentation that you watched. Think about a presentation that you were like, oh my gosh, this is so bad, okay? Now, how did you feel towards that person? And think about a presentation that someone maybe bombed that is a very good person that you think is a, wonderful person. They're wonderful at their job. They're very knowledgeable. Think about a time when you experienced someone bombing a presentation. I think we can probably all think of at least one, maybe even just from like high school or something like that. But think about what your thoughts were for them. Were you thinking, oh gosh, they're such a loser, they can't even do this presentation? No, you were thinking, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for them. I hope they can I hope they can get through this later, and you have these positive thoughts. You want them to succeed. You feel for them when they fail. You have good thoughts about them. You're not thinking they deserve this. If it's a person that does and is a good-hearted person, right? You're not thinking those thoughts. So think about the worst case scenario in your presentation is that you bomb the presentation. That is the worst case scenario, okay? And in that case, based on evidence that we have about how others respond, how you've responded to others that are drowning that you think are wonderful people, it's likely that those people are having the same thoughts about you. They're like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for her. She's such a wonderful person. I hope she doesn't take this to heart, or sometimes a lot of people in that room, people that maybe are presenting next, aren't even paying attention because they're so worried about their presentation coming up that they can't even pay attention to yours. And if we try and think back to our last presentation that we saw, do you remember what people were wearing or even all the topics they talked about? Can you remember really what happened during that presentation? It's hard for us to remember those things, especially if we're distracted by other things like being busy at work, having an upcoming, event that we have to talk out ourselves. So know that it's likely that most people are rooting for you, that everyone is rooting for you because they want to support you. You're good in your role. And the worst case scenario is that you bomb this presentation. And maybe some people are like, oh my gosh, poor thing, right? That's the worst case scenario. And is that bad? That's not that bad. What would you do in the worst case scenario? I would say next time you get some strategies. And speaking of which, some strategies that can help you with that are practice. Spaced practice over time has also been shown to increase our memory of whatever that topic is. So this is another way that's going to make you feel more confident about a presentation or even an interview. This can also go for interviews if you're trying to get to another position or transition between jobs. The more you practice that over space time, and what I mean by that is, let's say you have a presentation coming up in a month or 2 months, or an interview coming up in a month or 2 months. During that 1 to 2 months, you're going to practice the questions that you think you're going to have to answer or the topic that you're going to present on. And then 2 days later, so maybe you start this practice 2 months ahead. And let's say you practice a couple minutes a day, or let's say you practice the whole presentation, the whole interview once a day or once a week or a couple times a week. But having that spaced practice instead of, as opposed to trying to get through this presentation in our head the day before or the week before, trying to go into this interview with just studying, the night before for what you think you're going to have to answer. That is our short-term memory, right? That's what happens with short-term memory. We kind of get it all in there, we pump it and dump it, right? And by the time that's over, we don't remember those things anymore. If you practice spaced practice with those skills that you want to portray or talk about over time, that will turn into long-term memory for you. So you won't have to pull so far for that information. And the example I can give is in my own experience, as a practicing occupational therapist, when I gave my first presentation about a new service line I was starting, it was terrifying. And my heart was racing so much. It was awful. I got asked all these questions that I was not expecting. I didn't know how to answer them. And that really taught me a lot. I learned from that experience. And even though I couldn't really answer any of the questions, and it went kind of poorly in my opinion, but it didn't discourage me. I learned from that. And from then on, I was like, you know what? I'm going to make sure I practice this and I know this information so that when I get a tough question about what are you doing this for? Is this in your scope? Who are you going to help? Who can we send? What is the purpose of this service line? I can answer those things no problem because I've practiced them over and over again. Another thing you can do is, write those topics down as you go through. Again, adding that kinesthetic memory so that you know for sure that information at the next one. And then the more you practice that, the easier it gets to get that information out there to answer those interview questions. Okay? So those are some strategies that you can try to help build your confidence, to improve in your position that you're in, and to help yourself over time. Again, it's not going to happen overnight. We have to practice these skills. And over time, these things will start to be easier for you to do. It'll be easier for you to look for, hey, what's true here? It'll be easier for you to answer those interview questions, to give that presentation. It's going to be easier for you to keep track of the things at work that you did. It's very easy for us to pay attention to only the things we didn't do right. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this interview. Oh gosh, I did such a bad job. But did you? Or is it just that there was one question you didn't know the answer to? Because what happens is that it's very easy for us to see all the things that we didn't do. And even though 99.999% of our day went very well, we remember that 0.0001% thing that we didn't do well. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot that email. But you answered 85 emails that day, so give your look at that. That is what's truth. The truth is that you answered 85 emails a day, you missed one. So the bulk of your day, almost all of your day, was very productive. Those things get easier with practice as well, but we do have to practice those. So again, it's not that we're looking to be more positive. We're looking for truth, and we're looking to think about things more realistically and see things for what they are and in their realistic and their truth, And then we also want to make sure we're documenting those things so it's easier for us to pull from. We want to make sure that we are practicing things that we have coming up, especially when it has to do with meetings or presentations or interviews. We want to practice those things so that we make sure that those are going into our long-term memory so they're easier to pull from in the end. And we want to practice these things, consistently. These have to be practiced over and over again, because you're not going to get those six-pack abs overnight, right? You got to practice. You got to go to the gym. You got to do your workouts. You've got to do it every day for a long time before you start to see any progress. And that's the same with our brain. Our brain is plastic. There's something called neuroplasticity that allows you to change your thinking throughout your lifetime. And the way you do this is through practice. Practice, practice, practice. The more you start doing this, the easier it is for you to start to know these things are true and see things realistically for how they are. I look forward to seeing you in Module 2.